What does it mean to you to be an atheist? When you say you're an atheist, I've asked other atheists what it meant to them. Does it mean you don't believe there is a God, or you just don't believe in a God?
So my position is called strong atheism, whereas I positively affirm that there is no God. But that to me is one of the less important aspects of atheism. And I'm sorry to give you these big speeches, but given that I know I'm going to talk to you today, and given our history of having conversations both in person and online,
Yes.
I knew this was going to be an important part. To me, the big question for atheists is not whether there is a God or not, because being atheists, they believe either you can't prove it, which is more agnosticism, or that there isn't, which is atheism. The big question is, okay, let's say that you take God out of the equation. Okay, what do you do with the need for that extra O to go from God to good? Because atheists, by knocking down Christianity in particular, have created a void, a moral nihilism, a will to power. They have taken us from the human to the animal. And that's kind of what I felt I was surrounded by, these jackals, these hyenas when I was growing up, these manifestations of lust and manipulation. And so to me, the big danger and damage of atheism, which I will fully admit that when I was much younger I contributed to, but I've tried to do penance by working on a secular system of ethics ever since, is, okay, so let's say you don't believe in God. That's not the end of your intellectual journey. That's the beginning, and it's going to take you a long time to catch up to what Christians have. Because where does ethics, where does virtue, where do morals come from in Christianity? Well, they come from God's commandments. God is larger and deeper and more powerful than the universe, and morals are at the very center of that which exists. You take that out of our society, and what do you have? You have greed. You have lust. You have emptiness. You have manipulation. You have no fundamental requirement to respect persons, honesty, property, your culture, your history, your parents. And that has been a pretty chilling legacy, I think, that this amoral atheism has given us.
You are very interesting to me because you have the heart of a Christian. That's why I really wanted to understand this atheist thing and Christianity with you.
To put it more precisely, I can't find a rational proof of God, and since philosophy is about reason, that's the challenge, right?
And so when you are into philosophy, the ideas and understanding that you get, does it come from you?
So philosophy, I hate to say my philosophy because that's like saying my science. It's supposed to be something that is objective. So philosophy first starts with the study of the nature of reality. Like, what is reality? What is something that exists and something that doesn't exist?
Right.
Because if you don't have existence and non-existence, you can't say true or false. Like, if you don't know whether a tree really exists, you can't say that's a tree. So you have to start with what exists and what doesn't, and from there you can get to what's true and what's false, and from there, which is the step I've been working on for so long, you can get to what's morally right and morally wrong. Now, because the study of reality relies on the evidence of the senses, with your five senses, and it relies upon rational consistency, logical consistency, it has a problem when it comes to a deity, right? A God, because God does not impress himself on our senses. We can't converse with him in the way that you and I are conversing. We can't, touch him. We can't call him. We can't measure him. We can't detect his presence in any way. And so, philosophically speaking, that's the same as non-existence. And so that is the challenge that rational philosophy has with God, if that makes sense.
I see, yes. Do you believe, well, I guess not, is it possible there could be two realities, one real and one fake? Do you believe that's possible? And not seeing the real world, I believe that there are two realities. The real reality is within us, which come from God to the outside. And the fake reality is that they come from outside to within. The world is an illusion. Is that possible that the the trees, everything, it could all be an illusion, but the real reality comes from within, that there's a new world that's within us that was given to us by God. And once we enter into that world, we live the real deal.
See, philosophically speaking, you and I are currently in the Garden of Eden, and you're offering me a really tasty apple, and frankly, you're not wearing anything, Eve. Right? Because what you're doing is you are appealing to, and listen, it's perfectly fair for you to do this. I'll be completely honest with how tempting that is.
Yeah.
It's enormously tempting. I mean, you really should be wrapped in a snake, Natasha Kinski style. You know, I'm just going to enjoy that image for a moment, but it's really tempting, man. It's really tempting because that makes so much makes sense in the world, that we have an inner reality. We have a ghost within that lives forever.
Yes.
That is one of God's flock, that gravitates towards virtue, that is tempted by sin and is going to live forever. That is a great temptation for me. I love my family, I love my friends, and I love the world, although, of course, you know, if I'm immortal in my soul, then I leave the world behind, but at least I get to be reunited with friends and family, and you and I can continue this conversation perhaps on a cloud. But philosophically speaking, can't get there. Can't get to the deeper reality is something that neither has logical consistency nor impresses itself on our senses. That is the big challenge. And I get the temptation. I mean, I'm really there with you. And, you know, part times I think I'm trembling on the brink because it's a really, really tasty apple.
Yeah.
But the apple in philosophy, the knowledge of good and evil, the knowledge of right and wrong, of existence and non-existence, it stays in rational consistency and the evidence of the senses.
Yeah.
And now, there are some philosophers who would certainly agree with you, though, which is why I wanted to sort of say my philosophy. I mean, I think it's the better philosophy to go with empiricism, like evidence of the senses. But there are a lot of philosophers, sometimes even the majority of philosophers, who would agree with you that what we see tangibly, you know, like my sweater and the microphone and all of that, that's just a shadow.
Yes.
It's like a pale reflection of the true existence that is spiritual, that is higher, that is aspirational, and is not coarsened by just this gross material flesh bag that we walk around in.
It really is. I realize that the world itself is an illusion of the real world that is within us. And when Christ came, sent by his Father God, he created a new world because the old world is doomed. It's still the Old Testament is doomed. That's why you see so much destruction in the old world. But Christ created the New Testament, and the New Testament is hidden within us. And it's only for those who can admit that they are wrong, playing God, judging one another, judging themselves. Anyone who has anger is judging, and to judge is to hate. And when you hate your fellow man or yourself, you're separated from the true world, and you're now living in the Old Testament, which is still the world around you. And in that, there's nothing but suffering, fear, and doubt, and worry, and insecurity, diseases, and all kinds of things. But you can't enter into this new world. And the only way you're going to enter there, you have to admit that you're playing God, that you're not God, and that you're playing him. And that's what it means to repent, to play God. And then overcome your mother and return to the Father. When you love the Father, your earthly Father, you can love the true God, the real Father. I want to ask, do you believe that human beings are in a fallen state?
Ooh. Can you give me an easier question? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That's fair. That's fair. No, I mean, I don't want to be glib. You know, I
Right.
mean, I have a kind of motor mouth and a motor brain, so I want to sort of slow that down because it's a very powerful question, right? And of course, I'm guessing, looking over your right shoulder at the title of your show, that
Right.
you know, you're going with the plus on that one, a little tick box on the fallen state. I think that since the fall of Christianity, and not as an effect in the West, but I think for a lot of younger people, right? I know in England it's like less than 10% of young people are going to church.
Yeah, it's the same way here,
Probably
too.
more to mosques than churches these days. But I think that religion is better than Darwinism. And atheists, by taking down religion without giving people something to climb out of the flesh pit of Darwinism, have put people philosophically into a fallen state. See, we can't be animals because we are human beings. The only thing we can be is either human beings, which means we have a higher aspiration. We work with universals. It's one thing I love about Jesus is that Jesus was the only religious figure, at least in the Abrahamic tradition, that said, it's not my team and it's not your team, right? So
Yes.
in Judaism, there's the chosen people and they have less moral obligation to non-Jews. In Islam, they have less, if not negative, moral obligations toward non-Muslims. But with Jesus, it's like everybody.
Yes.
It's universal. So Jesus is the closest thing to philosophy that any religious figure has ever been. And that to me is a very powerful thing, which is why I kind of ran like this weird thing. You ever have these dreams where you run away from something and then you end up just right back where you started?
Yes.
And so like I'm running full tilt from Christianity in pursuit of universals, and then I find that my universals end up matching a lot of what Christ talks about. It's like, good job running away to exactly where you started. Or it's like that old poem, there should be no end to our journeying, and the end, and that the purpose of our journeying shall be to return to the place that we started, but know it really for the first time. So I think that we are in a fallen state. But to me, the fallen state is distance from virtue, distance from the essence of humanity, which is to not simply live the life of the flesh. We can't do that because we have this brain, we have this capacity for these amazing abstractions. You know, we can send a spaceship to Jupiter. We can send a little bathyscaphe to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. We can go and explore the Titanic miles underwater. No animals can do that. We can't just be animals. We're either humans or we're inhuman.
Yes.
In other words, we are the kind of monsters that I grew up around or who grew up in charge of me. And so my concern very much is either we get back to Christianity or we get forward or somewhere where we're not just pursuing this hedonism. Because while you're young and pretty and fit and all of that, hedonism looks like a lot of fun. But, you know, it was nice that you referred to me as a young man. I don't feel that often on the internet these days. But it is really the case that, you know, you've seen this too. And we've talked about this before. You see this arc of people's lives, you know, and this, you know, you avoid responsibility. You avoid taking ownership of your life. You avoid being a good person. When you're young, it looks like you're free.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what happens is like there's this arc and people begin to fall. It usually happen around 30, maybe 35. They begin to fall. And I'm old enough now to have seen this arc, and all the people who were like, wow, they're totally free when they're young. It's like they're now trapped in ways that is really horrible. Now, I saw that on the downside when I was born. My mom was like in her late 20s when I was born. So by the time I kind of knew stuff, she was in her mid-30s, and I really saw that decline that happens when you pursue
Absolutely.
lust, when you pursue greed, when you pursue defensiveness, when you can never admit fault, which is one of the big problems. Like, for men, we're addicted to status and power. Women are addicted often to right fighting and, you know, not admitting fault and so on.
That's for
I
sure.
really saw that decay. Now, that decay, man, that is a fallen state, and that is, to me, it's a hell that people live in, and that it was always terrifying to me.